Delegacije Evropske unije u Republici Srbiji. Kao što ste videli iz najave Medija centra, tema današnje konferencije aktivnosti Evropske unije povodom poplava u Srbiji, a vaši sagovornici ovim povodom biće ambasador Majkl Davenport, šef Delegacije Evropske unije u Republici Srbiji, vođa tima Evropske unije za civilnu zaštitu gospodin Teri Veb, gospodin Ojvind Semb, član tima Evropske unije za civilnu zaštitu i gospodin Kern, šef operacija Delegacije Evropske unije u Republici Srbiji. Zamolit ću vas da prilikom postavljanja pitanja obavezno zatražite mikrofon, predstavite se imenom i redakcijom. Zamolit ću vas takođe i da isključite mobilne telefone i da obavezno kad budete govorili podignete ruku kako bi koleginica prinela mikrofon jer se ova konferencija simultano prevodi. Ja vam se zahvaljujem i dajem reč šefu Delegacije Evropske unije u Republici Srbiji, ambasadoru Majklu Davenportu. Izvolite.
Thank you very much for introducing us, and thank you to all of you for coming. I will ask each of the team here to introduce themselves, just very, very briefly. You know who I am.
I'm Kern, Head of Operations in the EU delegation here in Belgrade, and I'm dealing with the financial assistance aspect, and including, of course, the financial assistance that we will provide to the recovery effort after the floods.
Yeah, my name's Teri Veb. I'm the team leader of the European Union Civil Protection Team. My responsibility is to look after the participating states of the immediate response to the floods in Serbia.
My name is Ojvind Semb. I'm the liaison officer to the ECP team from the European Commission in Brussels.
First of all, I should say that during these 3 days of national mourning, that our thoughts are very much with the families and friends and loved ones of the who have lost people close to them in the floods, and also very much with those who have lost so much, in some cases everything, in this terrible disaster over the last week. I should also say that we have been, as the EU, as the delegation, as the European Union Civil Protection Team deployed here, very impressed by the effectiveness and leadership which has been shown by the Serbian national authorities, the rescue teams, the courage and bravery shown by many of those who've been involved in the rescue effort, and also by the scale of the response by citizens, volunteers, whether individually or through civil society organisations, in facing up to the challenges presented by this catastrophe. I should say also that our approach right across the board is to provide support from the European Union and through the European Union by member states to the effort which the Serbian authorities are leading. And it's very much in that vein that through the 3 phases of dealing with the consequences, through the rescue effort, support to the rescue effort, the humanitarian phase of providing humanitarian supplies, and increasingly the focus being on the reconstruction effort. Our goal, our principle, is to work in support of the Serbian authorities. Hence, the team led here by Teri is embedded with Serbian colleagues and indeed colleagues from the United Nations in the Serbian Ministry for Internal Affairs. As you know, the European Union has been providing timely, large-scale and comprehensive support to Serbia through this three-phased response of rescue, humanitarian support, and longer term. The European Union activated on the 15th of May the EU Civil Protection Mechanism in response to the flooding both here and in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And so far, 19 member states have offered assistance and provided assistance through that mechanism. In addition, many member states have allocated bilateral financial and humanitarian assistance. And overall, there has been a response during this first phase, which is focused on what the identified priority needs are in Serbia. So provision of helicopters, rescue boats, power generators, high-capacity water pumping modules. And I should stress that right now there is, and Teri and Per will be able to say a bit more about this, but right now there is still a major effort underway at key power installations in Serbia, both in Obrenovac and in Kostolac, to support the authorities in clearing away large volumes of water which are still threatening the power supply, the continuity of power supply in Serbia, and we're going to go on doing that until as long as it's needed. We are right now also engaging in the assessment of humanitarian needs, again together with the Serbian authorities, and expect that assessment to recommend that funds should be made available and humanitarian supplies should be provided, particularly in the areas of basic health items, water purification, water and food, which we're of course already providing, but this will be done in larger quantities in the coming days, and the situation will need to be constantly kept under review. Looking ahead, already I'm pleased to say from the coordination meeting which the Prime Minister hosted this morning at the Palace of Serbia, attention is of course already turning to the next phase, and in particular the reconstruction effort to assist Serbian citizens and Serbian businesses in getting back on their feet, and also at the importance of reinforcing flood protection. This is another area of obvious high priority. And in that area, the European Union, and I'll ask Martin to say a few words on this in a moment, the European Union primarily is looking together with our Serbian government partners at how the instrument for pre-accession assistance, which we already have in place, can be deployed to meet the immediately identified needs. We need to ensure that we fast-track our procedures so that we can mobilize in the relatively short term, in the next 10 to 15 weeks, funds to meet urgent priority needs agreed with the government of Serbia. And in this area, we are thinking of particularly repairs to housing, public buildings, local and rural infrastructure, utilities, provision of basic supplies for municipalities, technical and social assistance for affected communities, because we're very conscious, and this was a point that was underlined also at the government meeting this morning, very conscious of the very severe problems being encountered, particularly by vulnerable communities and vulnerable individuals in this crisis. We will over the next weeks be working together with international partners, especially with the United Nations and the World Bank, but also with other international financial institutions, including the European Investment Bank and the EBRD, on a more detailed needs assessment. And it will be on the basis of that and indeed on the submission by the Serbian government to the European Union that the application for solidarity funding will be assessed. The point to make here, I think, primarily is that Serbia, as a candidate country and as a country which has already now officially embarked on negotiations with the European Union, accession negotiations with the European Union, Serbia has the right of access to solidarity funding, and indeed will be treated, as Commissioner Hahn said yesterday, and as Commissioner Georgieva said the day before, Serbia will be treated exactly as an EU member state would be treated in similar circumstances. Of course, the exact amount of solidarity funding can only be determined at a later stage, depending on a comprehensive damage assessment and a decision approved ultimately, as would be the case with an application from a member state by the European Parliament and the European Council. But without continuing further in that vein, I'd like to turn to Teri, first of all, to give you a briefing on the immediate priorities. Thank you.
Yes, hello, thank you. First of all, I'd just like to pay my respects and sympathy to the people affected by the floods, and that comes from all of my team. We'd also particularly like to pay tribute to all the professional rescue services that have been working continuously since the floods were affected, and most of my team are from that profession, so we understand the work rate and how hard they are working. My role in this in Serbia is part of the European Union Civil Protection Team. That's where all the member and participating states come together with all their expertise and joint resources, particularly in the field of civil protection, and then offer that resource to the whole of Europe and to the whole of the world as well. In terms of what happened with our team, the activation started sometime on Thursday. I was contacted along with my team colleagues to put together a coordination team last Friday the 16th. And by Saturday we were actually in Serbia establishing a foothold and working very closely with our colleagues in the sector for emergency management. During that time as well, a number of requests went out to member and participating states, particularly for water rescue assets and pumping capabilities. And by 8 o'clock on Friday, we already had a pumping team from Slovenia operating in the Obranovac power plant, and they were pumping by 8 o'clock on Friday evening. So that just demonstrates the speed at which the mechanism actually responded to the official request. I must stress that we are working very closely, and as Michael said, we are completely embedded into the Interior Ministry's sector for emergency management, and it's a very positive relationship. Our colleagues in the emergency management sector were expecting us. They were fully aware of how we operate. Many of them have undertaken European Union training. They understand how host nation support, as we call it, works, and how to accept that into their country and how we accept it into our countries when we need to do so. So that was an extremely proficient operation, and I can't speak highly of that. In terms of some of the other numbers we've brought in, at the peak we had approximately 13 pumps, high capacity type pumps. Now these come in modules, but the modules come with a number of vehicles and other ancillary equipment. Now a high capacity pump is a large piece of equipment. Some of our larger pumps can pump 25,000 litres per minute. So these are significant pieces of equipment. And they've all been driven from the participating states into Serbia. And I think the furthest team drove over 1,800 kilometres. And as I said before, we were operating by Friday, our first teams. In addition to that, it was supplemented by 6 rescue helicopters to support the immediate life-saving operation. And with that as well, we had 8 water rescue teams. And their remit is to carry out those initial life-saving actions with our Serbian colleagues in the affected area. Once that's completed, or once that was ongoing, we then moved and looked at the pumping operations. Now, currently, our pumping operations initially were based at Obrenovac and Kostolac, and these were protecting the power plants. They were there to secure the power plants from the floodwater, the risk being that we could have lost electricity production, and our understanding is that up to 60% of Serbia's power comes from those 2 plants. So that was a key and critical task, and that's happened in other countries as well, where we've had to do things like that. We're also operating in 2 other sites in Serbia, and at the moment the teams are coordinating, relocating and setting up in another further 2 sites, which I'm waiting for confirmation of. So as the floodwaters change and recede, we need to reevaluate what we're doing, and we're very reactive with that and proactive with our colleagues from the Sector for Emergency Management. And that's an ongoing decision-making process, because as the levels reduce and the water moves, we get areas of lagoons and other critical infrastructure that we need to pump out. So as the dynamic phase of the flood is over, we need to continually, proactively seek for new tasks, because we can gain access to different areas where we can start doing more productive work. To give some sort of indication, and this is a very average figure, we've been pumping approximately 500,000 tonnes of water per day. So that's a significant amount of water. The EU and the mechanism also has further civil protection assets available. So although everything is reasonably stable at the moment, and we're quite content with our colleagues from the Interior Ministry, if we need to call in more pumps, then we have the capability to do that, and other assets as well. So it's a very, very organised operation. And I must, as I said before, I must praise the work of our colleagues that accepted us into Serbia and put us to work straight away very, very effectively. Thank you.
I'll just ask Martin to say just a few words in more detail about the medium and longer term and the areas of focus and source of funding, if I may, Martin.
While the immediate support operations are still ongoing, we are already planning the next phase of support, which of course aims that all those affected by the floods can return to normal life as soon as possible. And it is obvious that that also has to be done in several phases. So what is very critical for that is to have a very good needs assessment and to see what are the needs which come directly after the emergency phase is over. And for that, we are looking at putting together an initial package of support in a range of 20–30 million euros from ongoing EPA funding, trying to redirect ongoing funding from existing projects and funds that are available in ongoing programs to direct them at those needs which come at the next phase. And those needs, as was already mentioned, center around issues such as the provision of adequate housing, repairing of buildings and infrastructure, and provision of basic supplies to the municipalities and communities affected, as well as technical assistance and a number of social services. At the beginning of that, or actually throughout that period, must be the completion of a very detailed needs assessment, so we can see where is the damage to private households, public infrastructure and companies, and what can be the most effective activities to alleviate those damages, and as I said, to start to return to normal economic activity and normal life for the citizens concerned. So we will focus mostly on the most vulnerable persons affected by the floods, and also on the municipalities and areas where there has been the biggest damage. And some of the things to allow normal life to return is in particular looking at also public services, public buildings, schools, kindergartens, hospitals, sports facilities and social services that were disabled by the floods. For that, we will also try to purchase supplies and equipment to support the municipalities, vehicles, equipment for schools, for students, these kind of issues, and then, as I said, also the provision of the social services themselves to support the victims from the floods. After that, of course, there will have to be longer-term recovery and reconstruction efforts, and in particular efforts related to restoring damaged infrastructures, roads, railways, bridges, and also more serious damage in some of the energy facilities, particular power plants, also the mine. That, of course, will be something that will take more time. So that will be a further phase. So what we're looking at now is to design an immediate package to address the priority needs, and we will look to work with national authorities, international organizations, civil society actors and companies who are in a position to help with those immediate needs and to deliver very, very quickly, because we want to show an immediate response and support Serbia to address the priority issues, and working for that very, very closely with the national authorities who are setting up now their own coordination structures. So we're already very close contact with them to prepare this package, and at the same time work very closely with the other international actors, meaning the other member states, international organizations who we hope and who we heard also this morning are more than ready to complement and to also support the recovery and reconstruction efforts. And beyond this initial package from IPA, we'll be looking to allocate further funds on request of the national authorities to support the reconstruction efforts. That will be something done in the coming weeks and months, and then in particular also look at the support that Serbia can receive under the EU Solidarity Fund. And that is where we are at the moment, and we do our utmost to create a flexible and fast response to this situation.
I might add that at the political level, Commissioner Georgieva spoke to Prime Minister Vučić over the weekend, and that was very helpful in identifying some of the key priorities. She then visited, of course, earlier this week, and visited also the flood afflicted areas of Obrenovac and Kostolac as well. The First Deputy Prime Minister and Europe Minister were in Brussels yesterday and had discussions with Commissioner Hahn about the modalities for further cooperation and assistance to facilitate all of the goals that Martin has been sketching out. And Commissioner Hahn will visit Serbia this weekend to take that forward as well. So this is very much an ongoing effort, but we thought it was a good opportunity to set out in a little bit more detail for those interested the scale of what we've been doing in this initial phase, in the ongoing phase, and in the preparations for the challenges ahead, where the European Union and European Union member states will very much be standing alongside Serbia in facing these challenges. Thank you.
Hvala. Idemo na pitanje, izvolite. Izvolite, da li ima pitanja? Izvolite, kolega.
You mentioned that your team worked and had the key task of protecting power plants, Renovac and Kostolac, and that effort is still underway. For how long do you estimate this threat of power plants will still exist? When do you expect this mission to be end and put totally under control? And what were other locations where your team was deployed in recently? Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the power plants, the situation is very stable at both of the plants. The pumps are maintained in that stability, and it's important that they stay there until we know that we know where the levels start to go. In terms of the Kostolac plant, we're already in the process of redeploying one or two of the pump units that are already there, so that gives a good indication that the situation is improving. But it's with the large-scale flood. As the waters recede, the water is in places that have never been mapped before. So it's very difficult to map the hydrology. So you literally have to wait and see as the levels fall to see which areas are affected. Traditionally, we have flood modelling, but as you're aware, there's been recent floods, particularly in the UK, which I was heavily involved with, where the floods are beyond those that have ever been experienced before. With conurbation areas and building, and because there's no modelling, it's difficult to actually model where the flows and the water go. So it's a watching brief. But the situations are very, very stable at both of those plants. And at the Kostolac plant, we're able to release one or two of the units to other locations. And what we're looking at doing is, as Martin mentioned, we've pumped out already a couple of kindergartens. But as we identify other sites, or as our colleagues in the emergency management sector identify other important sites that we need to pump, then we can reallocate those resources accordingly. It's also important to add that those resources are available until further notice at the moment. They are there, and if we need an increase in pumps, then we can put a request via the Serbian authorities back to the Commission, and we have other colleagues in the Member States with modules available as well. So that's very important. Regarding the other locations, I'll just pass you over to my colleague, Per.
There have also been pumping ongoing in other locations. There has been pumping ongoing in Sabac, and there has been pumping ongoing in Jagodina. In Sabac there is currently an Austrian team and there is a Bulgarian team in Jagodina. And there has also been there are also pumping ongoing in other places such as Lazarevac. As Teri just explained, as the water is moving, there is also a need to move the pumping teams. And they are moving and somehow following the water, as well as to pump out these lagoons that are left from the flooding. So, and yes, the pumping capacities will have to stay here as long as it is necessary. And what I see from the hydrometeorological office in Serbia is that both Sava and Danube will continue to raise a little bit until the weekend.
Hvala, izvolite. Sorry. Of course, you can.
Just to add to the technical detail as well, in terms of when we pump, it's important that the water that we pump goes to a safe place. Otherwise, you're just moving water around and it comes back to where you're pumping it from. And sometimes that might not seem obvious. So it's important that we take the broader view as well, because often people expect us to pump this this location next and this location next, but in the scheme of the hydrology and topographical location, it's sometimes not the best thing to do. So we need to take it on a risk-based approach and actually look at where the water goes, and take a pragmatic approach to that. And although it's very simple, and water is very simple and it finds the lowest point, in terms of when you build a built-up area, you put cities, you put roads, you put car parks, it starts to become quite a difficult dynamic to manage. So it's always an ongoing monitoring thing.
Izvolite. Izvolite, kolega. Koleginice, izvolite.
Dobar dan, jel može na srpskom? Dobar dan, Dubravka Velac, građanske inicijative. Ja sam ovde ispred platforme koja se zove Udruženi građani za Srbiju, koja je okupila 100 organizacija u ovoj situaciji, koji se primarno ne bave humanitarnim radom, ali prosto nam je situacija nametnula da se organizujemo, povežemo i ono što mi radimo jeste da prosto prosleđujemo informacije i šaljemo pomoć. Mene zanima, pošto ste pomenuli da se planira needs assessment, i to je nešto što mi trenutno i radimo, iz opština dobijemo informacije preko nevladinih organizacija. Koje je vaše iskustvo o ulozi nevladinih organizacija u ovakvoj situaciji i na koji način se planira uključivanje organizacija civilnog društva, posebno vezano za ove procene, jer znamo da nam sad sledi najteži period, to je ovo posle urgentnih potreba. Pa samo ako možete malo osvrt na ulogu nevladinih organizacija u tom procesu. Hvala.
Thank you very much for the question. As I said at the beginning, I'm very conscious of the role of civil society organizations and as well as individuals in this effort. I think it's also the case that the tremendously important experience that has been accumulated over the last years in terms of the role of civil society organizations in a whole range of areas relevant both to Serbia's development and to the EU accession process. I think that this can be put to good use now. And certainly, as Martin mentioned, in taking forward the needs assessment, but also in taking action on the basis of the needs assessment. I know that we will need an involvement of civil society. But Martin, perhaps you could say a few more words about that.
We see the role of civil society really as very crucial and fundamental in both the needs assessment and in the recovery effort, as obviously this needs to be a joint effort by all the actors, be they national authorities, civil society, and international partners. At the same time, what's very important is that there is also a coordinated effort, and that's very much true for the needs assessment. Our approach is to really work very much through the national authorities. And I think the most important recommendation and message in that respect is that you join forces together with the national authorities and coordinate with them and to see where can be the best value added for you to help with the needs assessment, and then later on with the actual recovery and reconstruction work. As I mentioned already, we'll be also very much looking at civil society actors as one of the delivery mechanisms for the initial and also then the longer term assistance which will be made available. And also there, once again, it will be about finding a good division of labor, good mechanisms for cooperation. So first of all, I'd like to address you to, of course, make contact with us. And I think it's very positive if you have formed a platform and already coordinate a number of civil society organizations, but then also, even more importantly, with the national authorities who will be leading, who will be coordinating both the needs assessment and the further work on rebuilding the affected areas. So that's very much welcome. Thank you.
Hvala, gospodine Kern. Izvolite. Sorry.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, my role in this intervention is civil protection, but many times when we finish our rescue phase or our civil intervention phase, we then move over to the humanitarian side. And it's important to start identifying those issues in the rescue phase straight away, and we've already started doing that. We're also working very closely with our United Nations colleagues as well, who started arriving Saturday, and they are also working with us and with our colleagues in the Interior Ministry. The role of NGOs for me, having done a number of missions internationally and nationally, is key and critical, and they bring an absolute value as an actor to any intervention. International NGOs, but more importantly local NGOs, because they understand the community dynamic, they understand how the delivery works, and they understand the things that for people like me coming into a country we do not understand. So their role is key and one of the most important. So I'd absolutely say yes, very good. Thank you.
Možemo dalje, izvolite. Da li ima još pitanja? Ako pitanja nema, možemo da završimo konferenciju. Se zahvaljujem gostima i naravno zahvaljujem se svim novinarima koji su se odazvali pozivu Medija centra. Hvala vam još jednom.